Hey, I'm Tim from Circuitous Effects, and you're watching Defining Circuit. Defining Circuit is a periodic interview series where I chat with fellow creators in the music world about what inspired and defined their passion for building the moments, ideas, experiences, and even the circuit that sparked their drive to create for musicians. I'm pleased to have Damian Kosbauer from Pedal Brains on with me today. Thanks for coming on, Damian.
Yeah, good to be here.
Hey, can you tell us a little about yourself and how you got into making pedals?
Cool. Yeah. I've been playing guitar for most of my life and swiftly fell in the deep hole of effects pedals in the early 90s
Oh,
with
yeah.
the emergence of British shoegaze. So
Cool.
from there, no turning back. How can I push my guitar to sound like anything but a guitar?
Yeah.
Using effects, DSP, and whatever cool tricks are in the bag. So, been fiddling around a bit with trying to expand on the effects that I do have
Hmm.
with expression. And so,
Yeah.
I ended up with 5-foot controllers on the ground. You see these, pedal boards and playback systems, and ultimately still only two legs. And so I started to think about a way to automate or modulate
Mm.
expression in a kind of, different ways. And so from this desire, Pedal Brains was born. And
Okay.
from there, expanded from just simple manual control to light based, and then, yeah, modulated by patterns of light. And so,
Yeah, I mean, you've got some unique
yeah.
ways to manipulate oscillation and other things that have expression attached to them for sure. Tell us a little about your journey from just manual control expression and the learning process from LDRs into other ways of manipulating expression automatically.
Yeah, well, it really escalated quickly. When I started, I knew very little about electronics. I had done some mods, some rehousing,
Mhm.
but really didn't and still don't know a lot about the fundamentals of electronics. So for me, it was about building blocks, starting with just the manual manipulation of expression using a potentiometer. And we know that as an expression pedal with a
Yeah.
rocker, foot controller, but just breaking it down to its simple elements, understanding that tiny piece of the puzzle. And from there, thinking, well, if I can do this with my hands, well, I can do it with light as
Yeah.
well, as a photoresistor acts similarly to a potentiometer. So
Mm.
a little
Okay.
bit more to, scratch my head on there and figure it out. And of course, along the way, recognizing that there's no true standards for expression.
Yeah.
So this wild card of, getting pushed off the deep end into trying to unravel the way that different effects manufacturers are using expression, well, escalated quickly
Yeah.
again to where I started to implement different resistance values for the expression, inverting where the reference voltage was coming from, just all as a way to unlock different effects pedals and how they were using expression. At that point, it was like, okay, well, if I can do this with light now, I can imagine flashing patterns of light at this photoresistor.
Mhm.
Again, that was the natural progression that I took, which led me to, putting an Arduino in it
Yeah.
and leveraging all of the amazing light flashing tutorials out there in the world.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. So, in your professional life, you work with audio, right? It's a sort of a different type of profession. I can see being a guitarist wanting to leverage the expression capabilities of pedals. Do you think that anything from working on audio APIs or things that connect audio to other systems helped you imagine or devise what you were going to do with expression pedals?
Absolutely. We look at games and fundamentally the dynamic aspect of games leveraging parameters from a game
Mm,
to control audio in order to have that interactivity, that dynamic
yeah.
synchronicity. And so when I compare that to expression, well, we're really just talking about a parameter for modulating these properties of effects. So
Okay.
absolutely a direct relationship. And that really did push me in the direction of something that I think games do really well, which is this idea of non-standard repetition or some amount of randomization as part of that interactive audio experience, trying to get away from repetition because repetition breaks the immersion a lot of times in games. So
Yeah.
what I was really looking for when I did get to flashing patterns of light was the ability to control those patterns
Mm.
with amounts of randomization that could be, tuned and scaled so that they fit whatever the practice, whatever the effect, whatever the intention was.
Yeah, that's great. So, moving from the oral capabilities of using expression pedals just a little, because I really want to also talk about your aesthetic approach. And we can see by your background, I mean, you have a very kind of whimsical, artsy ideal, I think, that you live up to, especially with some of the shirts you wear and, other things like that, which I think is totally great. Tell us about how you first decided on the tiny enclosures for your pedals, and
Yeah.
then also the artistic approach of how you design them.
The first thing is that as an expression device, you already assume that it's going to be a companion to an effect. So there's already that assumption. And
Mm.
from that moment, I think we all stare down at our pedal boards and wonder, where is there space for these things?
Yeah.
And so for me, miniaturizing as much as I could the form factor of pedal brains was important because ultimately I've got, you know, half a dozen or more brains on the board at any one time.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, that was really important. Second, like the durability of an enclosure. There are different ways to go in this day and age. You can take on 3D printing, you could go into plastic, but I think the durability of that aluminum enclosure just felt so familiar.
Yeah.
And from there, it became about, well, how can I pack as much into this tiny footprint as possible? And, again, wasn't really familiar with circuit board manufacturing processes when I got going. But I guess I set myself the challenge of trying to squeeze this all into as tiny a footprint as possible. And I feel like circuit board manufacturing really enabled you to go small and experiment with that form factor.
Mm.
I realize I'm talking mostly about those early stage prototyping processes, but
Mm.
then once you get it all fit in the enclosure, wow, it's gotta look cool.
Yeah.
So I hit on the pink sparkle finish right out of the gate, had a great collaborator at Obscura Manufacturing who was
Cool.
able to get it in the pocket and do all of the machining on the aluminum
Oh, wow.
enclosure,
Great.
which again, like I did the first few by hand to varying degrees of success. But again, leveraging the tools that are available, leveraging the skills of people out there who can really pull off amazing things in these different form factors.
Yeah.
Well, it became a great way to explore the uniqueness of what was possible. And from there, I ended up leveraging my younger daughter's art skills. She helped me design the eye that became
That's great.
central to the Pedal Brains logo,
Yeah.
the logo for the third eye. And from there, it evolved across the different models in a cohesive representation.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of the form factor, was it a challenge to get the Arduino to fit into that space, or was that something that they already had a PCB that was that size?
Yeah, good question. So again, I started from very little knowledge about these things, circuit board design, circuit design, Arduino programming. And the way that I got started was just to leverage a pre-built Adafruit Cutie Pie, it's
Okay.
called. So it's an
Yeah.
Arduino on a board. You can order them in bulk and they're programmable via USB. So for me, I didn't even know that that was something that you could put on a circuit yourself. I just saw it off the shelf as something I could buy and
Hmm.
leverage. And so ended up building the circuit around the application of this cutie
Okay.
pie.
That's great. Yeah. You talked a little about using people like Obscura Manufacturing and your youngest daughter and other people that could help you along. Are there any processes that you've improved personally over time to allow you to put out larger numbers of pedals or things that you might be able to impart that would help us maybe rethink how we approach pedal making?
Yeah, good question. At one point, scaling was interesting. I had a huge boost from Emily Hopkins,
Hmm.
Emily Harpist
Yeah.
early on. And it really gave me the inspiration to be able to grow Pedal Brains in the direction of what people were responding to.
Yeah.
And so it was around that time that I investigated local sources for being able to assist with the assembly. And for me, what that meant or what it means for Pedal Brains is really just the hardware assembly of two circuit boards,
Hmm.
standoffs, a very, manual process of putting things together. And I was able to successfully source a local supplier here in Seattle who could help with that. And yeah, it was at a certain scale, you recognize that there's a value in leveraging other people for their skills. And
Yeah.
so to me, that became a winning strategy at that point to keep up with the demand that there has been for pedal brains.
That's great. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have four or five versions of Pedal Brains right now? Is that correct?
Yeah, six
Six. Okay.
all in, which is really just three fundamental models. The no-brainer or manual control, the
Hmm.
third eye, which is a light-based, photoresistor, which you built
Yeah.
your own version of, which is
Yeah,
fantastic.
that was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and it works amazing too. So,
Oh, great, great. And then finally, the left
I'm
brain.
sorry to interrupt you. I should interject too that my youngest daughter did the art on mine as well. So,
Love it. I love it. Great, great connection. Good to leverage your collaborators.
yeah.
And then finally, the left brain, which has controls over three properties of over 50 patterns of light, an expression loop recorder, and some other fun
Yeah.
little Easter eggs. So
Yeah.
those three models form the basis of the first series, which were focused on expression. So that's the passive resistance
Hmm.
of a reference voltage that comes from an effect. Now, I wasn't quite satisfied with that implementation for myself. And so I iterated on that series to create the control voltage series. And again, same models, no brainer, third eye, left brain. But this version outputs control voltage. So meant to be used with effects to bypass the internal reference voltage and directly inject a control voltage to it for various different reasons and benefits.
Yeah. And so, have you seen a lot of people using those with modular synths and other things to do some pretty crazy sounds?
Yeah, it's a perfect crossover device for folks who are using both effects, synths, or video synth.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic collaborator who uses it in conjunction with their synthesizers to simultaneously warp their synths
Wow.
and video synth. And again, I think that as a utility device that works across different kinds of tools or toys, it has been well applied out there. So,
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
yeah.
So you
And for
have
me, it
the
was about, having access to being able to invert the modulation direction
yeah.
um, without having to, I don't know, bend over backwards with passive resistance. The other thing was, again, falling off the deep end, realizing that, well, what even is control voltage? First of all,
Yeah. That's a
no
deep dive,
idea.
isn't it?
Yeah. Finding again that you had varying degrees of standards for it. And one standard is the 0 to 5 volts
Hmm.
output, but I had an effect that used a plus and minus 5. Oh shit,
Wow.
negative voltage? What is that? So, for me, it became really important to enable those kind of creative applications of control voltage. So there's a way to switch between unipolar or bipolar, 0 to 5 or plus or minus 5. And
Wow.
so putting these tools in the hands of people to make creative decisions, and for myself,
Hmm.
became really important piece of iterating on that series into control voltage.
Yeah. Now, with these two lines or the ability to go from expression to CV, what's in the future for pedal brains? Do you have some new ideas that are going to be happening soon or in the future?
I'm cool to just kind of kick back here for a while,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay.
I'm pretty satisfied in my own practice so far, leveraging different brains for different reasons.
Hmm.
And, I feel like I'm going to just coast here for a while. There's some other ideas that I hold onto. One is that ability to, with your foot, to toggle on and off the
Hmm.
modulation. So to go from, whatever the manual setting on the expression device is, or to the, automation or modulation. So a foot switchable device for either expression or control voltage. And then I've already kind of hacked my way into a couple enclosures to create mults or the ability for a CB device to pass voltage to more than one output.
Okay.
So
Wow. That sounds
could there
exciting.
be a pedal brain, multi-brain in the future that takes in a control voltage and puts out multiple? Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
It's working for me right now. And
Yeah.
again, I think one of the interesting things is that the synthesizer world has this. Like they've got no shortage
Yeah.
of mults and LFOs and as far as the eye can see in that format. But on the pedal board, I don't know what you've been seeing, but really opening up to this control voltage future with folks like Fairfield Circuitry,
Hmm.
the Glue stuff from France, a bunch of different folks who are bringing this control voltage to the pedal board. And
Yeah.
I think the Pedal Brains control voltage series fits right into that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how about this? Is there anything that you've done with your brains that surprised you? That you put some things together to create expressions that just went above and beyond what you were expecting?
Yeah, good question. And so my practice, just to describe it quickly, is like I'm an improvisational guitar player, mostly playing solo. Again, piles of effects. Let's say even took things into the quad dimension
Mm,
with my playback. And what I'm always trying to do is create these systems of playback that encourage a kind of surprise and delight.
hmm.
You know, pick up the guitar, start playing, go off in a direction, toggle things on and off, and surprise myself
Yeah.
with what unfolds from whatever intention I might have had. And so I think that that is fundamental to be
Yeah.
surprised. And
That's great.
so I'm always reaching for that. And there's just some effects that I feel like are cool when you turn them on and they do their thing and it's awesome. And they get even cooler when you modulate aspects of that
Mm,
effect.
hmm.
And again, it doesn't have to be dramatic. I'll give you a good example. Like put the tensor in the chain. I'll do some crazy granular stretching and just a little bit of wiggle on that timing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you go from something that has a kind of static repetition, awesome
Yeah.
in its own right, but now bring in a little bit of wiggle. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, you go from a kind of static playback of that effect and its properties to just a little modulation once in a while that pushes it in a way that's unexpected. I feel like the progenitor of that was the shallow water
Yeah.
from Fairfield circuitry. They came out with that K field modulation for that kind of chorusing
Mm.
effect. And it blew people's
Yeah.
minds
Yeah.
because all of a sudden we got out of that typical sine wave repetition
Right.
that we're used to with choruses, flangers, and phasers. And it's exactly that kind of unique pattern, non-pattern that was really fundamental
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
creating the left brain anyway, the modulated light patterns.
That's so cool. Well, this has been so fun, Damian. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tim.
And
Yeah.
thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the conversation, stick around. More interviews are on the way where I'll keep exploring all the things that define why we do what we do. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Modulate the world, express yourself. And thanks for having me today, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.